Fred, welcome to the show, mate. So good to have an Aussie crypto person and no less the crypto king himself on the pod. How are you, mate?
I'm good. I'm really good.
So, Fred, look, for a lot of people in my audience, they probably don't know who you are. They may have seen some sort of news clip on, I don't know, Channel 9 or whatever. They've seen the crypto castle, this big brutalist mansion on the beach or on the cliffs more so in Sydney. But just quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on your background, but just for people listening, who is Fred Schebesta? How did you get to where you are today? What's your background?
So I think I'm a bit of a creator. I like to build things. I've been building things since I was in my college room. Started my first company there, and then I built a bunch of companies throughout time. I sold a few as well, and I guess most notably, I founded finder.com.au, which is also finder.com in the US and the UK and Canada. And then I've sort of gone very deep into crypto as well, and I have a deep passion for cryptocurrency. Built a few businesses there as well, and sold a few. And I'm a passionate creator. I like to do things differently.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Finder, I mean, if you're an Aussie listening to this, I think it's $1 billion company now. It's a unicorn, is it? Today, I think it is.
I've no idea.
No idea. It's a big business, let's just say that. But you started off, you had a design agency initially, wasn't it? Like a digital agency, and then you morphed into it. And if you want to learn more about Fred's background, there's a great documentary on YouTube that I've watched that really gives you a good insight into that whole journey, which I think was fantastic from an entrepreneurial point of view. So Fred, I think a great place to start is I'm really curious, how does a guy like you find your way to crypto? Why are you so passionate about crypto coming from the tech world and now migrating and really advocating for crypto in Australia, better legislation, better frameworks, and I think about the next generation of entrepreneurs coming through, and I think you're sort of leading them and funding them. Why are you so excited about crypto? What drew you there?
Well, I think that the digitization of currency has been happening. I'd say probably for the last 15 years. We used to use a lot of paper, plastic, and we still do to some extent, but slowly over time, everything's become just digitized numbers that are sitting in a ledger. And I think the leap from 1971, the disconnection from the gold standard has just completely busted up and inflated currencies. Seigniorage is rife and out of control, and I think those two ideas are kind of fundamental. And I think the last one is that the people should be able to control currencies, because governments have systematically proven throughout time that they cannot manage it. And if you want, out of interest, anyone who's listening, go to Wikipedia and Google the number of failed currencies that exist throughout human history. It is an exorbitant list. You can't use the Roman denario anymore, unfortunately. And that's because at the end of the Roman Empire, most of the coins was just lead instead of gold, which has been stolen by the government throughout time. So I think the combination of those three things, and the other things that I love to combine is, it's a combination of marketing, finance, and technology. Three things that I love combined together in one single thing. And I think this creates a huge opportunity for a new financial system. And I say new financial system, and I mean that in every sense of it. A lot of people don't like that. Like when I say that, they get really whatever. I keep saying it because it's happening, right? The tokenization of everything is just really starting to roll out. US is ramping up, and you watch it, it'll roll out around the world. And I think that moment in time, right, there is a Cambrian explosion already of, I would call it primitives that exist now. There are chains, there are decentralized applications, stablecoins, real world assets, things which are the fundamental primitives. But the true change in moment in time in cryptocurrency, what will happen is when we go from all the money being in the infrastructure and all the money instead transferring now to the applications. And we saw that in the internet, right? The internet, Cisco was like the number one hottest stock. You know, the ones providing the internet, they were the super, super sexy ones. And now you look at it, all the value has gone now to the people who control the applications that deal with the customers. And that hasn't happened in crypto yet. It hasn't happened. You know, the chains are worth more. You know, you look at the top coins, it looks like the old stock market where Cisco was right up there, and you know, obviously that changed. But that moment in time is why I want so many Australian entrepreneurs, and obviously entrepreneurs around the world that are listening as well, to participate, and some of the greatest engineers to come and build businesses, because it's an opportunity is right now. Like, it is right now. You can, with 5 to 6 people, or even 3 to 4 really good people, bond together and build something that millions of people, tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people will use all around the world. It is not located in any particular jurisdiction. This will be a global currency. It'll be a global financial system, and it'll be built by the people for the first time. Just like the internet's not controlled by anyone. That is the exact opportunity, and that is a huge change, and I would call it a paradigm shift in how humans do finance.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, you know, I think just feeding back to you, what I heard there is that one of the major drives is that money itself is broken. We can't trust governments, and that's not just now, that's just history. We see the US, you know, in a huge amount of debt, like every reserve currency operator before them. They can't resist the money printer, and eventually they collapse. Historically, it's 100%. But then on the other side, separate to the base layer being the money, there's all the finance industry and services that operate off the money, things like banks and loans and credit cards and all these other financial services. And if we look into the digital equivalent of that, would you say that sort of Bitcoin is sort of like the base layer of the money in the digital world, and then these other chains are the expressions and the use cases? Is that kind of, because a lot of our audience would be struggling, and at this point they just see them as like lottery tickets. Should I buy Solana, mate, over at the pub? Or what do you reckon? Is XRP going to go to $4? And that's the limit of their understanding of this revolution. So how would you describe, like, maybe a good thing to do is, like, maybe share with us 1 or 2 you think really exciting projects that are happening right now reliant on this new world of blockchain technology that is going to change the world.
You know, it's digital gold, it's scarce, and its narrative has only just begun. You're looking at what gold looked like 5,000 years ago when someone, you know, held it in their hands and gave it to someone and said, "This is really rare. What can I do with this? I have no idea what you mean." And I think that's you know, people are treating that. It's like funny. It's almost hilarious what people would have done with gold, and hilarious what people have done with Bitcoins. You know, just bought pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. You know, there's all sorts of things, right? And I think, you know, if I was to go and the amount of research and people I've met, interviewed, journeys I've been on, and just straight conviction there is throughout the planet of and the world of number of people, that's what you're fundamentally investing in, right? There are people who, like, this is deep philosophical fundamental belief in what Bitcoin should be, can be, and will be, from people who started at the beginning, coded it, helped to code it, continue to mine it, support it in ways that you would, you know, the conviction level is absolute, and you gotta, you know, that's, you gotta be part of that, right? So storing wealth and storing your value throughout time. I just wanted to zoom out a second for everyone, because I think this might help, is, you know, what do humans value throughout time? Well, you need certain conditions, you know, things that have held their value. Like if we got $100 some Bitcoin and a piece of gold and just buried it in the ground, put $1,000 of each in the ground right now, and fast forward at 100 years, what would each be worth? Well, probably the $100 be worth almost nothing. The Bitcoin's probably worth maybe 100 grand, and gold maybe 100 grand as well. Who knows? I'm not going to forecast the prices of them exactly, but you get the idea, right? Time and change is an ever-present force in the universe that we coexist in, and what we look for are things which are able to trespass that. So if I was to boil that down, that's something I think fundamentally that humans have been searching throughout time. Pieces of real estate do that to some extent, but the problem is a government can come and take your real estate. Pieces of jewelry do appreciate. Again, someone can steal it from you. Stamps and art throughout time. My grandfather took a whole bunch of stamps and traveled out of, a Russian-controlled post-Nazi Austria and traveled to Australia and brought his wealth through stamps. And that used to be a currency, right? He has some interesting pictures on some of his stamps. Let's put it that way. Art. There's only certain scarce forms of that. Pokemon cards, originals, yes. We've seen that. There are things, certain cars. But you're getting very fragile, right? That's not as immutable as you go down the list.
I think it's a good segue because it's interesting discovering. I know you've got a Bitcoin ring on, and you're an interesting one because it sounds like you sort of fully get, like, you're orange pilled. You understand the spiritual implications and the impact on humanity, if you like, of having sound money. But you're also an entrepreneur and an investor, and you're interested in the layers that get built and can change the world. And so as an entrepreneur and investor, and you can see those opportunities. And I'm excited to hear what you see coming in the crypto space. And I also want to talk to you about your recent action with ASIC, because I think it's so important that we have people like you that have brains and resources and can speak out and advocate for the industry. So I want to talk about that in a minute. But yeah, so it is possible to be a Bitcoin believer, so to speak, but also be an investor in what people think of as altcoins, but they're really tech startups, and they're entrepreneurial, and they can change the world as well. Unfortunately, spiced in there is a whole bunch of scammers and shitheads, but there are legit projects out there that are going to change the world. And I'd love to hear from you, like, for somebody listening, what do you see as a real world use case? Maybe we could talk about the tokenization of assets, so that somebody who's maybe a boomer watching this goes, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. But they just see crypto tokens as these gambling chips.
Yeah, I think if I was just to start where I'd start, and I think it goes down a fairly large rabbit hole. I think one of the, something which I've been fascinated by and believed in is stable coins. I believe, and I saw this back in 2021. I thought Circle was the most undervalued company in crypto, and I was trying to buy its stock so badly, but they wouldn't sell it, right?
You were right.
And they the interest rates were terrible. They were losing money for so long. But let's just talk to that for a second here. What's the use case? What's the problem?
What is it? Yeah, what is a stable coin for the listener? Yeah.
Yeah, so stablecoin is a one-to-one representation of a fiat currency. So if you want to move, if I want to send Adam $100 today in value, I can send him a stablecoin over a blockchain, and I can choose a range of different blockchains, and I can send it from my wallet to his, and I don't need to call a bank. I don't need to call a third party. I don't need to speak to anyone. I can just send that any time of day. And that use case of transferring money, initially for a lot of people who are in countries where transferring money just happens. In Australia, the rails are fine. India, the rails are great. America, it can be a bit bumpy, but eventually the FedWire system does work. And Visa and MasterCard fill a lot of gaps. Europe works, UK works, right, to some extent. But there are many countries where, for example, I have a animator. This is just a real life example. And, he's in Lithuania, right? And I'm like, okay, you've got a Lithuanian bank. You've done this work. We need to send you 600 euros. Okay, cool. The amount of work for my team to go and load up a Lithuanian bank account, to go and figure out all the Swift details and make sure it doesn't mess up and some intermediary is quite arduous, let's put it that way, to get it exactly right. And instead, he just gave us a Bitcoin address. We sent the funds directly to him instantaneously. And all of those costs and all of that administration internally for my team, for his team, is removed. And he can just take that, sell that, and transfer it to his bank account. It can go to his accountants. It is an incredibly empowering financial tool for companies, individuals who need to receive money. Remittance business around the world is obviously, I don't need to go into how big that business is, but it's a huge business, right? And I think that is kind of, what's really challenging probably is, the Bitcoin white paper was talking about a peer-to-peer payment system to some extent. And I do think people pay each other in Bitcoin as well to remove doubt. I do think that does happen. There are hardcore believers in that sense. But this is just, I think some people, it may be a transition. It may not be. I'm not sure. But because if fiat currencies completely blow up, then that will change things. And it may be that there are stable coins that represent in some way, shape, or form Bitcoin, they're Bitcoin backed or something. I'm not sure. That's where it gets very complex. But today and now, and at least for as long as these organizations and governments hold on to the fiat control of people paying taxes in their local countries, people are going to have to go and send money to other people. And that keeps these fiat currencies alive. And I think, let's start with that use case, right? So sending money. Now, what do you need to do then? Well, firstly, you need some sort of organization to go and to power that. I think that's fine. The second thing you need is to put it on a blockchain. And so I was talking before about, the Ciscos and AOLs of, these dot-com booms. And a lot of that was, it is done and is built things like Ethereum, Arbitrum, Solana, Tron, like all. I'm not going to, I don't really want to get into exactly one versus the other, whatever it may be. But those chains enable these payments. And I think that's a really strong use case, right? That is something we need, and they get paid a small fee for transferring those funds immutably with permissionlessly 24/7, 365 days a year. And you don't need to call anyone. You don't need to call them. It works. And I think that's a solid building block and use case, right?
In Dubai, in Dubai, we spoke to somebody recently. He was talking to us about the first real estate that's being tokenized onto the blockchain. And for the listeners, a blockchain basically serves the role of a bank's computer system almost, isn't it? Like the bank's job is to, if I send Fred $100, it takes 100 off my balance and puts 100 in Fred's, and the bank's in the middle. The blockchain is like the middle piece, and these blockchains serve different purposes. Maybe you could talk to about what tokenization is of real world assets, and maybe an example for people sort of understand and where you see good fits.
Yeah. I think the tokenization, if I was to try and communicate that for anyone listening, if you were to imagine when you purchase a piece of real estate, how do you know you own it? Or you have a piece of paper that's a title, and that title gives you legal, rights in some way, shape, or form to that piece of land. And tokenization is that exact same thing of real world assets, where you have the token and therefore you have a piece of that real world asset. Real world asset just means something that exists in the world. And an example of that is gold. So there are gold tokens. You can buy gold. You buy the token and you have a representation of gold. And this company, this organization, holds that actual gold, just like Fort Knox in the US holds gold, and they say how much they've got. They attest to how much they have. And this organization, one of them is called Paxos, will hold that gold and attest to holding it. Now, that's obviously very simple, but it's actually brilliant because, anyone can go and access it. What we're starting to see now is the tokenization of stocks. So you can buy NVIDIA or Google or whatever stock you want to buy, Coinbase, in the US, and you can purchase that and have the ability to hold a portfolio of stocks without going through a broker, without going through a third party, and holding that token gives you that same value and representation of the stock. And
but could you trade it? Could you trade it 24/7?
You can trade 24/7.
Even when the market's closed, I could send you some Apple stock peer-to-peer through the blockchain instead of having to wait from Monday to Friday and the market's been closed. That's 100%. Incredible.
It's bizarre. It's almost hilarious that the stock market trades from it's almost 10:30 to 4:30. It's like it's almost baffling. It's like, and they used to not trade apparently after lunch on Wednesdays because they had to go and collect all the tickets together and work out who's got what. And you got to remember that's what this stuff still has. There are clearinghouses that still shuffle pieces of paper around.
And it shines a light, Fred, on why the incumbent, the existing. There's so much money in the existing architecture, the banks, the brokers, entire office buildings filled with human beings facilitated around this draconian mechanism, whereas we could be living in a world where you open your phone and you have your blockchain-enabled stock portfolio that's there 24/7 without any of those people. And you're saying, the rails work pretty well in Australia, unless you're trying to buy Bitcoin or crypto. But then all of a sudden, the banking rails stop working in Australia. And it's no wonder why. We're like, I'd be interested in your perspective, but